Good day, everyone. So, our topic for today is all about the culture, Philippine literature in English, traditions, and beliefs. The arts of the Philippines show a society with different cultural influences and traditions. The Malayan peoples had early contact with traders who put into use Chinese and Indian influences. Islamic traditions were first introduced to the Malays of the southern Philippine Islands in the 14th century. Many modern aspects of cultural life in the Philippines evolved under the rule of Spain and later the United States. In the 16th century, the Spanish imposed a foreign culture based on the beliefs of the Catholic Church. While the lowland peoples took on this imposed foreign culture through religious conversion, the Muslims and some upland tribal groups kept their cultural independence. Among those who were acculturated arose an educated elite who began to establish a modern Filipino literary tradition. During the first half of the 20th century, the American influence made the Philippines one of the most westernized nations in Southeast Asia. The cultural movements of Europe and the United States strongly influenced Filipino artists even after independence in 1946. Although they used Western forms, the works of Filipino painters, writers, and musicians, however, were infused with distinctly Philippine themes. By showing the cultural richness of the country in all its multiplicity, Filipino artists have helped to mold a sense of national identity. Despite centuries of foreign rule, many Malay cultural traditions have continued to exist. Muslims and upland tribal groups maintain distinct tradition in music, dance, and sculpture. In addition, many Filipino artists incorporate indigenous folk motifs into modern forms. Music. Filipino classical musical compositions in several ways embody the fusion of multicultural influences. The compositions often incorporate indigenous themes and rhythms in Western forms, such as symphonies, sonatas, and concertos. Several composers and conductors in classical music have been recognized internationally. One of them is C. Masida, the first Filipino avant-garde composer who unshackled Philippine classical music from the traditional constructs of Western forms. Traditional types of music are played on wind, string, and percussion instruments made from local materials. These include the kolibit, a zither with bamboo strings and tubular bamboo resonators, wooden lutes and guitars, and the git-git, a wooden three-string bowed instrument. The Muslim peoples use these and other instruments to play complex musical compositions that have been passed by memory from generation to generation. Most Filipino communities remember the tunes and lyrics of traditional folk songs. Tagalogs, for example, have more than a dozen folk songs for various occasions, including the Yoyayi or Heli, a lullaby, the Talindao, a seafaring song, the Kumintang, a warrior's song, the Kundiman, a love song, and the Panambitan, a courtship song. Some songs are accompanied by the specific folk dance. So let's move on into Philippine literature in English. The transfer of the Philippines to the United States sovereignty in 1898 occasioned an upsurge in literacy and consequently literary production. Filipino novels, short stories, and poems written in English were first published in book forms in the 1920s. In general, the writing of many Filipino authors deals with the cultural identity of the Filipino in the context of social and political issues. Many Filipino writers often write in different literary forms and in different languages. In the next slides are the major Filipino works in English. First is The Winds of April in 1940 and The Bamboo Dancers in 1959 by N.V.M. Gonzalez. Next is Many Voices in 1939 and Have Come I'm Here in 1942 by Jose Garcia Villa. Next is You Lovely People in 1955 and Scent of Apples and Other Stories in 1980 by Benvenido and Santos. Next is The Laughter of My Father in 1944 and America is in the Heart in 1946 by Carlos Bolosan. Next is Bitter Country and Other Stories in 1970 by Roska Ninochka. Next is The Woman Who Had Two Novels in 1972 and A Question of Heroes in 1977 by Nick Joaquin. Next is The God Stealer and Other Stories in 1968 and Tree in 1978 by Francisco Sionel Jose. Next is A Question of Identity in 1973 by Carmen Guerrero Nakpil. And lastly, His Native Coast in 1979 by Edith L. Tiempo. Now, let's move on into traditions in the Philippines. The first tradition is the marriage and family. Most Filipinos marry before they reach the age of 30. The bridegroom and his family pay for the wedding ceremony and reception. The bride often does not see her bridal gown until the day she is married. Grooms often wear a barong, an embroidered shirt that hangs over the trousers. At the reception, during the first dance of the newlyweds, relatives may take turns clipping money to the groom's shirt or the bride's gown. Some couples live together instead of or before having a formal wedding. The next tradition is eating. Rice is the most basic food found in the Filipino kitchen. It is prepared in a variety of ways and included as desserts as well as main meals. Fish and pork and poultry are the most common meats. Among others, garlic is used most generously. A typical meal might include boiled rice, fried fish, a vegetable, and fruit for dessert. Adobo, a stew of chicken or pork in garlic, soy sauce, and vinegar. Kare-kare, a stew of meat and vegetables served in a peanut sauce, are two of the most famous dishes many Filipinos prepare. A favorite snack is halo-halo, a drink made from sweetened beans, milk, and fruits served in colorful layers with crushed ice. On special occasions, lechon, a stuffed pig, is often roasted over a charcoal fire. Filipinos usually eat 3 meals a day and snack between meals. Families in rural areas normally eat all meals together, while families in urban areas eat breakfast and dinner together on weekdays and all meals on weekends. When guests are present, they are more often than not served first. Normally, no one eats until after the guest has had a bite or two. Although compliments are welcomed, the best way for a guest to show appreciation of the cooking is to eat enthusiastically. The next tradition of Filipinos is socializing. Many Filipinos enjoy visiting as often as possible, especially in the barrios, which are small villages or suburbs. Some visits in rural areas are often unannounced due to the lack of phones. Among urban residents, visits are less frequent and more planned. Guests do not typically take gifts since the visit itself is considered a gift. However, a guest who has been away for a long time is expected to bring a small, inexpensive gift to the family. Although socializing in the home is most popular, people also enjoy gathering in public areas. Urban neighborhoods often have a central area where people socialize. Villages nearly always have a plaza where political events, dances, meetings, and socializing occur and basketball can be played nearby. For the next tradition is recreation. In the Philippines, socializing with relatives, friends, and neighbors and watching movies are some of the leisure pursuits that Filipinos enjoy doing. The Philippines is the world's fourth largest producer of films, a number of which have a strong religious theme. Films from foreign countries such as the United States, India are also shown. In the cities, video cassette recorder or VCR ownership has grown considerably among the middle class and video rental stores are common. Sundays are big days for sports. Basketball, baseball, and soccer are all played. Filipinos are keen gamblers. This explains the popularity of horse races and cockfights and playing mahjong, a Chinese table game played with tiles. Now, let's move on to beliefs. The Philippines is predominantly Christian. Approximately 84% of its people are Roman Catholics, 10% Protestants, and 5% Muslims. The remainder are Buddhist, animists, or non-believers. The predominance of Christianity in the Philippines reflects Spain's colonization of the islands in the 16th century. Spanish colonial authority hinged on locally based Catholic religious groups to help exercise political control. This interdependence made the church a powerful institution in the country. Despite the official separation of church and state in the country, the Roman Catholic Church continues to have enormous influence on Philippine politics. The Muslims in the Philippines live mainly in the southern islands of Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago. Islam existed before Christianity in the region, spreading to the Sulu archipelago in the 14th century and Mindanao in the 15th century. Islam had a few supporters as far north as Manila by the time the Spanish arrived. After 1571, when the Muslim ruler of Manila was beaten by the Spanish forces, the Muslims were almost completely confined to the south. And that's all for today. I am Hana Miis Gabasa, your pre-service teacher, and thank you for listening.